Thank you for staying with us this hour. You are watching On the Edge. I'm Dr. Jonas Moses.
Hey.
This is a special report. We are talking about public health policy and infectious diseases. With me to discuss that, Dr. Rodney Richards, Dr. Andrew Maniotis, and Audrey Serrano. And right before the commercial break, you started talking about, I had asked the question of the panel, what can we do right from here on out? What are some progressive things we can do?
Well, right away we can have a dialogue to reappraise the fact that nobody's ever seen or isolated HIV
or other diseases.
Or other diseases, especially the ones that have had an association with cancer,
okay,
which is my interest. Hepatitis B was supposed to be the cancer-causing virus.
All right.
They came up with the hepatitis B vaccine for that reason.
All
now
right.
HPV is supposed to be the other first cancer vaccine. The same company forgot that it made the claim originally that Hep B was the first anti-cancer vaccine, and now they're saying HPV.
So what can we do differently?
Well, what we can do is, instead of attacking these things with such fear, we should look at the history of disease a little bit more carefully.
Okay.
We should begin teaching medical students. I work in a pathology department, and I'm not allowed to raise concerns about the test kits that we give patients. All right? Recently, a mother was thrown in solitary confinement because she wanted a second opinion on a melanoma. I testified, and the judge threw it out. I mean, that should not be happening in this country. The reason it's happening is because there is this disconnect, as Dr. Richards was saying, and as Audrey has said, between the classic doctor-patient relationship. We need to appeal to doctors. They're our last hope. They're the last great hope, because the corporations aren't going to do it. The U.S. government's not going to do it. It has to happen in the doctor's office. They have to say there's a sacred relationship between the doctor and the patient that the government should not be interfering with.
Okay.
That's a violation of so many laws, international laws, etc.
Dr. Richards, Rodney, you did some research, rather extensive research in sub-Saharan Africa and Africa. Andy, Dr. Maniotis is talking about the West, the United States in particular. What about other countries? What about third world countries? What can we do there that we're doing different than we're doing now?
Well, we're basically colonizing these developed countries with Western notions and Western medicines. There are education campaigns that I think can be effective if they target the right populations. But it's interesting that it seems to me that the patients themselves in sub-Saharan Africa are the ones that are their own advocates. If they don't like the drugs, they quit. They don't.
So they take themselves off.
Right. And this is something I said, that patients also have a responsibility. Look, here's a woman who took responsibility for her health, and look what happened. She went from having a death sentence to now closing on her home. Okay, and a very bright future.
Not before they took a daughter away from her and treated her like she was some sort of criminal for 13 years.
And I want to point that up, and because we have very little time.
Right. So patients have to become involved, and as I said, we've handed over our health care to doctors like they're gods in this country. In general, I'm speaking in very general terms.
And even doctors will be patients at some time.
Africans don't have those gods.
All
okay,
right.
so what do? They listen to their own heads, and this is why 40–50% of the population that goes on to these medications for AIDS in Africa quit after 2 or 3 years, and I think they're really not. They're not caught by this paradigm that we have to have the doctor tell us what to do. So I think that is the little bit of good news that there might be.
Okay.
It's also the constant Gardner syndrome with the sperm, the microbicide campaigns of John Moore, where they double the rate of HIV infection, or the breastfeeding dissuasion campaigns where there's 20 times the infant mortality in the women who have been told they'll give HIV to their children, or the nevirapine campaigns by Tremont, the head of the AIDS program, who says that I can give nevirapine to 875,000 African, because they have to be black or from a country where the people really don't matter, the constant Gardner syndrome. I can give this drug that's so toxic that it was withdrawn from the U.S. because we don't want to waste money on it. Let's dump it on them, and then increase the so-called resistance rate of HIV to 41.7%.
Okay, we have just a brief moment left. I want to thank all three of you for joining me. This is obviously an incredibly important conversation, and plainly, there's an awful lot more to cover here. I hope that I'm able to engage the three of you and others in a panel discussion in the near future. Thank you so very much for joining us, Dr. Richards. Audrey, thank you for joining us, and I look forward to continued improvement and success. I know that your condition has been substantially damaged by the drugs that you were using.
Before we close, can I give credit to a couple of people?
Yes, of course.
I'd like to give credit first and foremost to my mother, Shirley Pascal,
Okay.
and my family, to Andrew Maniotis, to yourself,
Thank you.
to my attorney, David Anguera, and his firm, Swartz & Swartz, Attorneys at Law in Boston, Mass.
Okay. Well, thank you
for
very much.
all of your support, because I didn't do this all by myself. I'm here, and you guys are looking at me like I did all this, and I just want you to know that I didn't do it by myself.
They couldn't have done it without you.
Right. Dr. Andrew Maniotis, as always, a pleasure. This is obviously an incredibly challenging and controversial conversation. I cannot encourage you enough to consider the following, that we don't have all of the answers. We have very few answers here among us. No one person or group has all of the answers. Plainly, this is a question of us all taking a good, hard look at these paradigms, taking a good, hard look at the conventional wisdom around infectious diseases, and to recognize that we all, at some time or another, are going to be patients. The net is we all want what's best for the end user, the patient. To that end, I hope that you take the time, do your homework, investigate what's out there, ask and reevaluate and reassess over and over again, and don't accept any paradigm as the ultimate fact. If we stop questioning these paradigms, we stop engaging in the scientific process, and that's where science and medicine ends and religion begins. You've been watching this hour on the Edge. This has been a special report talking this hour about infectious disease and public health policy. I've had the good fortune of having joined me Dr. Rodney Richards, Audrey Serrano, Dr. Andrew Maniotis. Again, anytime you wish, I also have a blog site. That's jonasmoses.blogspot.com. I have been posting to YouTube, that's a website on the internet, youtube.com, past shows that I've done. So these are shows that are archived. Please visit those. Please visit my blog spot. I'm Dr. Jonas Moses, on the Edge.